Check 1 2. Live test 1 2. Check check check. Hello Springfield. Test 1 2.
everybody ready? Okay. Before I begin, I'm just going to apologize. I am on the rebound of several days of laryngitis, so my voice is a little raspy. I apologize for that. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here. 2 weeks ago, I stood before you to discuss what would happen if the General Assembly and the Governor were unable to reach an agreement and pass a balanced budget. Unfortunately, the consequences are now being realized as our state has entered a new fiscal year without an approved budget. Today, I want to walk you through what we can and cannot pay and what we are doing to ease the pain of operating our state without a budget in place. First, let's talk about what we can pay. We will continue to pay bills, from fiscal 15, the fiscal year that we have just ended. As of today, we still have a bill backlog of more than $5 billion, and we will continue to pay down those bills as cash is available. Second, we will make non-appropriated payments that are required under the law, including payments on our debt, payments on our pension funds. Retiree benefit checks will go out on schedule. These are non-appropriated state obligations, and they will continue to be paid. Third, our local governments will receive the majority of their funding because it is a pass-through of the state's sales tax dollars. Working closely with the Governor's Office and the Attorney General's Office, we have identified court orders that will allow us to continue paying certain bills that serve some of our most vulnerable citizens, including programs at the Department of Children and Family Services, temporary assistance for needy families, child care assistance, and certain community programs for the developmentally disabled, the elderly, and those with mental illnesses. And last week, the Governor signed the Education Appropriation Bill, which means that our office will be able to make its general state aid payments on August 10th and avoid any disruptions to our schools. However, without an appropriation or a court order, we will be unable to continue payments to nonprofits, social services, and small businesses that are not covered by the court orders that I just mentioned for their new fiscal year 16 expenses. These are organizations that have been receiving expedited payments from our office for fiscal 15 due to existing hardships. And while they will still receive checks for any fiscal 15 payments that we still owe them, they will likely be among the first to feel the pinch because we are more current with them on our payments, and we do not have an appropriation to pay them for any of their new fiscal 16 bills. Similarly, other state vendors will have their new fiscal year bills put on hold. But as we discussed previously, we have over $5 billion in bills right now outstanding in our state. We will continue to pay down those bills, and so those vendors will probably not immediately notice that their new bills, their current bills for this fiscal year are not being paid. So in general, our office will continue to process payments for bills incurred in the fiscal year that just ended. However, services that are authorized by state agencies in this new fiscal year will only be paid in full when we have appropriations from an approved budget in place. Lastly, there is the issue of paying state employees. The reason we are here today is because the General Assembly has failed to do its constitutional duty and pass a balanced budget for the state before the end of the fiscal year. Last year, the members of the General Assembly passed a law so that they would continue to be paid even if there is no budget in place. That means that the people who put us in this situation by failing to do their job will get their paychecks. So let's just think about that for a minute. The men and women who show up for work every day in our state to do their jobs as we require them to do have no idea when we will be ready to pay them. These are our first responders. These are the people who cut the checks and send them out to everyone to make sure the state payments occur on time. These are people providing human services. These are people with families and mortgages and financial obligations themselves. And we are asking them to wait for payment. Yet those who fail to do their job are those who we must pay first because they had the power to vote that for themselves. And ladies and gentlemen, that is one of the problems of Springfield today. As of today, I do not have a court order to allow me to pay state employees, nor do we have an appropriation since we have no budget. Depending on the payroll of their agency, some might start missing paychecks as early as July 15th. But my job as comptroller is further complicated by a federal law. It's the Fair Labor Standards Act, and it requires me to pay essential employees at least minimum wage and any overtime that they have accrued. Sadly, it's been widely reported that our state's antiquated computer systems and databases make that task very difficult to identify which employees actually fall under the Fair Labor Standards Act and which do not. It makes our job of adjusting their pay, adjusting their deductions, their benefits, identifying them so that we comply with the law accurately, really a logistical and impossibility, an operational impossibility. That is why yesterday I sent a letter to the Attorney General to partner with me to obtain a court order so that we can pay all state employees, protecting the state from potential triple fines that would come if we are not in compliance with the federal law. This is the financially conservative approach to take for our state. Illinois faced a similar situation in 2007, and with the Attorney General's support, the court agreed to the order. The circumstances we face today are no different than they were in 2007. So I'm asking that we seek the same resolution to allow me to carry out my duty to comply with the federal requirement. This court order addresses our need to comply with the federal requirements and, importantly, will allow us to pay state employees who we require to remain on the job, despite the fact that we have no budget, to provide essential services for the state. And keep in mind, we will have to pay these employees anyway as soon as we have a budget in place. So it's just paying them earlier versus later. But let me be completely clear. These court orders that we are seeking, these are not a substitute for a budget. By running our state via court order, we are ceding our responsibility to manage our state to the courts. This is irresponsible and it's unnecessary, and it really needs to end. It is the General Assembly's duty to pass a balanced budget, and it must be balanced. We have years of unbalanced budgets that we have had in our state have put us in the situation that we are in today, with over $5 billion in bills that sit in our office now that are unpaid. It does not help anyone to promise them funding when we do not have the money or the cash to write the checks. As I said before, this is not a game. There are real people's lives at stake here. This budget has serious consequences for families, for organizations, for businesses throughout our state. We ask them to provide services for the state and goods for the state, and yet we cannot give them any indication as to when we will be able to pay them for those goods and services. The taxpayers of Illinois deserve better than this. And while I don't have a vote in the General Assembly, my predecessor left me a very large megaphone, and I intend to continue to use it as the comptroller of the state. I also want to stress that my office will continue to operate without interruption, processing all payments that we can under state law. And at the same time, we have established a budget hotline to answer any questions regarding state payments. That number is 855-IL-ASK-US, and I encourage vendors to use it as a resource. It's time for our lawmakers and our governor to find common ground and to get a balanced budget in place. And my office will continue to provide whatever resources we can to get that job done. Thank you. And now I will be happy to answer any questions.
So to be clear about this, are you in agreement with the Attorney General who is petitioning the court to make minimum wage payments to employees, or are you seeking full payments of wages to employees?
I welcome the Attorney General's request of the court to give us some clarification on what we can and cannot pay. There is a lot of ambiguity right now in our laws about what we need to pay legally required under the state and under the federal laws. I can tell you as the comptroller, the requirement of paying minimum wage and overtime for only certain employees, deciding which of those employees are essential to accurately comply with the law, will be very difficult, if not impossible, given our state's current financial systems. I've been out everywhere in the state talking about how antiquated they are. We have 263 different systems, multiple payroll systems. They're from the early 70s and 80s. It is difficult to make changes to them. They have to be manually overridden. We would have to go in and reduce pay to minimum wage. We would be behind in benefit and accrual, pension accrual, et cetera, to go back and later and try and catch those up. It will be a logistical nightmare if it's even possible. So I believe that in order to comply, the best course of action was simply to pay those people in full.
Who are the essential state employees? State police, EMD, would they get full payment? Would they be required to stay on post?
So that's another question that's actually not completely clear. As I just stated, there's a lot of ambiguity in all these laws. And so by asking the courts to look at this, the agencies, the federal law actually states that it's up to the agencies to decide who are essential employees. Because of our antiquated systems, it is not easy to go in and just say, here's a list of essential employees. So it takes time to go identify who those people are. By agency throughout the state, we have 65,000 state employees. And then to make the adjustments in their payroll. It's logistically really not possible to do in a very short-term basis.
As I recall in the 2007 agreed order that the court acceded to the request but said this is not precedent. This does not create any precedent. And basically said to the state, get your act together so you can comply with the federal act. So just by virtue of wanting an agreed order, there's no guarantee that the court would grant it.
That's correct. And yet, today as I stand here, nothing has changed in our state from that 2007 agreement. We still have the same, albeit even older systems now. We did not identify essential employees. I will say that I'm proud to tell you all that we just recently signed an agreement and are beginning to put in place a new statewide accounting system. We began the working to get the pilot up and running yesterday. And next year at this time, if we face a similar circumstance, we will be in a position to identify essential employees and to be able to make some of these changes more easily complying with federal laws. But the past number of years, nothing was done on any of the state systems. Employees were not identified as essential or not. And so I stand here today with the same problems that we had in 2007.
So are you going to be... A month ago you were saying here that you didn't have authority to make these payments, and there was no mention of any sort of court orders or anything like that. Did something change, or did you... Why is this happening now, and why not?
I think I've been pretty consistent in saying that the Comptroller's Office has the authority to disperse state funds only under statute through an appropriation or under a court order. And so because we do not have an appropriation with an approved budget, we are asking the courts to make clear what we can and cannot pay so that I can perform the duties of my office legally.
The last time you said that your office couldn't make any new Medicaid reimbursements, what can you do via Medicaid now? Has that changed at all?
I believe everything I said before is still accurate. Any new bills, and I will say a lot of these $5 billion in bills that we have outstanding now are medical provider payments that are due. So we will continue to pay medical provider payments from our fiscal 15 budget as we owe a great millions of dollars on those bills. We do not have any authority to pay new bills for fiscal 16 for Medicaid without an appropriation or a court order.
So are you planning to seek your own court order? Because my reading of the Attorney General's request here is that she's asking for clarification on the FLSA, or in the absence of that, an order that says you can't pay anybody. So how are you going to get the court to say you can pay them in full?
I sent a letter to the Attorney General's office. Actually, we discussed it with her office late last night, asking her to partner with me to get the court to give us some relief so that we can ensure that we comply with the federal law. If we are wrong on the federal law and we do not properly pay employees, we subject the state to triple fines of the payroll that's exposed. I think it's important to remember that the people, if we don't pay them, state employees now, if we paid them now and they weren't truly essential, we're not harming the state financially. We would be paying them anyway as soon as we have a budget for that amount. The difficulty arises in the federal compliance with the federal law.
So what, I guess I'm so confused, what are you doing actually to try to get permission to pay the full amount?
We're asking for a court order to pay the full amount, and
Are you
frankly,
going to file a separate court order though, or do you think that what she's filed covers that?
well, what she has filed asks for clarification from the court, and I believe we have asked her to look at following the 2007 order. Because honestly, we ask people to show up for work. I personally think it's the right thing to do. We ask people in our state to show up to work and do the job of the state with no pay. And as I said, the people who are getting paid are the people who did not do their job in the legislature, who spent the last month playing political games, frankly.
Just to clarify, please. You said you wrote a letter to the Attorney General yesterday. You said your people or you directly talked with the Attorney General yesterday. Reading what she filed this morning, are you on the same page as the Attorney General, or do you disagree with her as does Governor Rauner?
So let me just be completely clear. Our office has been in constant conversation with both the Attorney General and the Governor's office. And there is a lot of uncharted territory here, and there's a lot of gray area because the way the laws are written. We need to comply with federal laws. We need to comply with our state laws. We have to pay things that are required by statute. There are court orders that we can all agree on, and there are others that we do not yet know exactly who they apply to. What the Attorney General has done, and I spoke with her this morning, is that she has gone to court to ask for clarification from the courts as to what we can and cannot legally pay. I would like to see us pay all state employees. We are asking them to come to work and do their jobs, and practically we cannot pay them minimum wage because our systems cannot manage that. So I would like to see that done, but I will comply with what the court decides in this order, and the Attorney General is seeking the assistance of the court to get clarification on what we can and cannot pay.
This will be the last question.
What's your expectation on how quickly you're going to get a court decision on the holiday, obviously? Have you asked for an expedited hearing?
I don't know the answer to that question. I have not asked. That's the Attorney General is the one who's bringing the decision to court.
Do you have any substantive views on what's going on in Springfield? You were appointed by Governor Rauner. Is it your view that the reforms he's asking for are sufficient for him to take that stance, even if it means a government shutdown?
Are you speaking about the turnaround agenda reforms that he has?
About things like redistricting, we're talking about, there's a whole variety of things that he articulates in the turnaround agenda.
So I've been, I believe I spoke in the last press conference about the importance of having a budget that's balanced. The legislature sent a budget to the governor that was nearly $4 billion out of balance. That's actually why I put the situation where we are now back on in the hands of the legislature. It's not even close to being balanced. The governor has asked for some reforms. There's been a lot of discussion about whether or not they're budget items. I'm here to tell you from my business experience that many of the things that he has on his agenda are things that will help reduce costs for businesses, that will help encourage them to stay here in Illinois, to invest and grow, put people back to work, and expand our tax base. We have a state that has been irresponsibly managed financially for many, many years, and as a result, we have the worst credit rating in the country. We have billions of dollars in bills that are unpaid. We have net loss of taxpayers leaving our state, and we cannot go down the same road again if we are ever to put Illinois back on a strong track and get our economy turned around and make Illinois the booming state that, frankly, we should be. So I support the governor's reform agenda because I believe it will help make Illinois competitive again. And I believe many of the things that he's asking for are actually critical to our ability to get our economy growing. They are budget items. They reduce the cost for businesses. They put people back to work. It helps top-line growth in our state.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
You didn't answer the question. I asked whether you're on the same page as Attorney General Madigan.
We're done.
Or not. And quite frankly, respectfully, you didn't say
I
a yes
told
or
you.
no answer.
I told you I'm going to follow the law. That's why I'm going to follow the law. That's why I've asked them. I'm in between the two. We are trying to get clarification on the law. Thank you.
Thank you. What is the, I got interrupted a couple times trying to ask this. What is the actual date, because you're still paying out like 18 when's the date that that's going to shut off?
So it depends. I mean, some of them, it depends on how long they're